Chapter 161. Shizun, I'll take you flying. For a moment all was silent. Then the hall erupted in confusion. The guests' faces paled, their gazes converging on Ye Wangxi where he stood, eyes closed and head bowed, not making a sound. Not a man? This handsome and stalwart young hero was actually a woman? The black-clad man's words were like water dripped into a hot wok, instantly producing a wave of searing heat. There were gasps of astonishment and an explosion of buzzing conversation, like the harsh sizzle of oil in a pan. Ye Wangxi's a woman? Heavens, how could this be? No wonder Nangongzi didn't put the blame on her. He must have known. That means Song Chitong was really... She was just trying to save her own skin by framing an innocent person. How awful. If they never slept together, then she's accusing him just to clear her name? No way though. How can Ye Wangxi be a woman? I can't tell at all. Nangong Liu's eyes flashed with cold light. He stared into the inky pupils of the man in black. Sir, there's no need to stand here and lie. Where's your evidence? If your conscience is clear, then release Nangongzi, said the man. Fortunately, your esteemed son may be headstrong, but he's a gentleman to the core, not a heartless man like you. Face shining with greasy sweat, Nangong Liu stood in silence, hands curled into fists. What's wrong? The man in black asked coolly. Go on, release him. Nangong Liu swept his sleeves aside. An outsider like you has no place telling me how to discipline my unworthy son. The cheek of you! Whether or not Nangong Liu would admit that the man in black told the truth, the facts were plain from the way he spoke. Even those who originally hadn't believed now began to waver. They scrutinized Ye Wangxi's handsome face again, searching for any hint of femininity. A clear voice called out from within the hall. Nangong Jamin, you're in the wrong here. The crowd turned as one. Mei Hanshur stood beneath the flickering light, and Shadow draped in a luxurious fox fur coat, the very picture of poise. Smiling, he continued. Miss Ye is valiant, but she is without a doubt a woman. Esteemed sect leader, since you're a man, you ought to favor the fairer sex. And since you're of the older generation, you ought to be magnanimous toward the younger. How can you bully a girl like this for the sake of Rufeng Sects' reputation? As he spoke, he crossed unhurriedly to the front of the hall. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was lucky enough to meet Miss Ye at Peach Blossom Springs. I thought her gallant and lovely, no willowy waif, he said with a small smile. I was smitten. Sadly, I offended her with my careless words. She turned me down, and we had a small disagreement. After tasting Miss Ye's brilliant moves, how could I help but be impressed by Rufeng Sects' long line of heroes, with its lady cultivators being no exception? But although I had regarded Miss Ye's sect highly, after witnessing the sect leader's behavior today, if you ask me, Rufeng Sect doesn't deserve such a beauty. Mei Xianjun, you and Ye Wangxi met so briefly. It's only natural you would be mistaken. Nangong Liu's expression was glum, but his teeth remained barred in a smile. Out of deference to Kunlun Tashu Palace, I won't argue with you, but I advise you not to show any further lapse in judgment. This time, he didn't sound so calm. The man in black chuckled. Mei Gong's amorous exploits are legendary. If he can't tell whether someone is a man or a woman, I'm afraid there's no one in the world who can. Nangong Liu was incensed. Sir, were you not just criticizing Ye Wangxi for humiliating Song Chitong? Yet now you say Ye Wangxi is a woman. He snapped. They're all lies to compromise the integrity of my Rufeng Sect, to ruin my sect's name. If not for this plan of mine, how would Nangong Gongse come to see Miss Song's true character? The black-garbed man replied. If he married the wrong person, he would have to live disgusted for the rest of his life. But your explanation makes perfect sense. Not to mention, if Yevangshi is a woman, how did the cinnabar on Song Chutong's wrist disappear? What's the point in asking me this question? Why don't you ask her yourself? The man in black sneered. After all, your Rufeng Sect has thousands of male disciples. If the esteemed sect leader has the time, you can interrogate them one by one. You're sure to get a satisfactory explanation. This was a matter of Rufeng Sect's reputation. Though no one in the crowd made a sound, it was impossible to hide the scorn and curiosity on their faces. Their eyes were like thorns picking Nanggong Liu from behind. He stood unmoving for some time, then turned to bellow at Yevangshi. Come here. Yevangshi silently acquiesced. Out with it. Did Miss Song fabricate the story or not? Nanggong Liu stared down into Yevangshi's face, betting it all on the final bargaining chip in his hand. How could he not know that Yevangshi had deep feelings for his own son? She wouldn't want Rufeng Sect's good name to be blackened. Tell everyone the truth. Yevangshi had ever been obedient, always the most biddable piece on his chessboard. Nanggong Liu could recall clearly the day Yevangshi, then only 13 years old, had received the order to come before him in Rufeng Sect's dazzling great hall. The doors had shut, leaving the two of them alone inside. He had looked down from his ice-cold throne at this girl of 13, who still had a child's figure. She wore a short jade-green jacket with a small silver bracelet at her wrist, and her hair was tied with a satin ribbon. Wangxi, he said to her with a smile, you must know why I've summoned you today. Yevangshi knelt and kowtowed before him. Yes, honored leader. Your Yifu has suffered several severe injuries. He can no longer serve as the commander of the Shadow Guard. As his foster daughter and Sia's childhood friend, you're the only one I can trust with this responsibility. Yevangshi didn't rise. She calmly remained in a kowtow, her slender neck showing beneath her braid, like a lamb baring its throat for slaughter. You're an outstanding talent, destined for a bright future, said Nanggong Liu. It is my wish to make you the chief of Rufeng Sect's Shadow Guard, with command over one of the 72 cities in the future. You'll be a boon to your Yifu and indispensable to Sia. From now on, he will stand in the light while you stand in the shadow. Together, you'll usher in Rufeng Sect's next century of glory. He paused. However, it's fine if you refuse. Your Yifu can hold out a while longer, and I can search for a better candidate. I know this will ask many sacrifices of you, so don't force yourself if you are unwilling. After speaking his piece, Nanggong Liu shifted on the seat of honor and waited. This girl had no parents and no one else to support her. He was assured of the outcome. He only waited for her to nod. At last, Yevangshi sat up straight and looked at him coolly. In that instant, Nanggong Liu felt a chill run up his spine. It was as though this girl's gaze had penetrated straight through his schemes and false smiles. But in the next moment, Yevangshi said, Yifu gave me my life. To repay his kindness, I'm willing to do anything. After a pause, Nanggong Liu sighed. This is truly an unfair thing for me to ask of you. Yevangshi replied calmly, indifferently even. It is I who should thank the sect leader for the honor. However, Nanggong Liu was already moving on. Rufeng Sect has always valued men above women. Women are, after all, weak and soft-hearted. In this world, only men have what it takes to control the masses and command a city. Wangxi, you're a clever girl. You ought to know what's required."
Ye Wangxi was silent for a moment. Then, facing Nanggong Liu with an icy expression, she pulled the bracelet off her wrist and untied the ribbon from her braid. She shrugged off her jacket, leaving only her pure white inner robe. Finally, she shook out her braid and gathered her hair into a high ponytail. The sunlight streamed from the windows to fall on her straight back and resolute brow. Although her figure was yet immature, she had already the air of a tall pine or a cypress.
"Very good. You must present yourself this way henceforth,"
Nanggong Liu said.
"But don't forget,"
he reminded her, attentive to every detail.
"There's the matter of your voice."
Ye Wangxi looked downward. She had noticed the pair of golden shears before her seat when she entered. She took them up and swiped their blades ruthlessly across her throat. Vivid blood dripped. "Let my old voice be forever extinguished." She slowly pronounced the words of the incantation before closing her eyes and tossing the shears at his feet, their golden blades now streaked with blood. Nanggong Liu stared at them for a long moment.
"Good, good. From today forth, you are Rufeng Sects Gongse, the successor to the Shadow City's commander. As for Seer, I remind him to be a bit nicer."
When Ye Wangxi opened her mouth, her voice was already that of a young man's.
"Sect leader, I humbly ask this. Don't let my Yifu bear his worries alone anymore. I will share the burden with him."
Nanggong Liu knew Ye Wangxi's character too well. It had been 10 years since she started her seamless masquerade as a man. When she reached puberty, she secretly took medicine every day, privately enduring its painful effects in order to develop her current masculine figure. In Nanggong Liu's eyes, Ye Wangxi was a dog Rufeng Sect had raised. To repay them for her upbringing, she would never betray them. 10 years ago, blood had splattered across the floor when she'd cut her throat to alter her voice forever. Today, she wouldn't let him down either. He was gambling that Ye Wangxi would oblige him. As long as Ye Wangxi herself said she wasn't a woman, even if no one believed her, what could they possibly do? It seemed the black-clad man had come to the same conclusion. He strode over to Ye Wangxi and raised a hand to block her way.
"Nanggong Liu, Miss Ye has already offered her passion and youth to Rufeng Sect. Now that you're out of excuses, should she sacrifice her life too?"
Nanggong Liu was about to argue when an orange light shot into the distant night sky and exploded in a shower of sparks. Another hunter had brought down a spiritual deer. Yet in the face of these secrets of Rufeng Sect laid bare, who cared which youth that deer had fallen to? It no longer mattered who won second place. The eyes of all were locked on the center of the great hall, where chairs were strewn across the ground and the main table split in two. The mysterious black-clad mastermind stood between Nanggong Liu and Ye Wangxi. The groom of the evening had been trapped in a barrier by his own father, while his bride knelt on the floor with a face marred by tears, shaking with silent sobs. Between the accusations of adultery, the bride and groom falling out, a man revealed to be a woman, and now Rufeng Sect's leader refusing to admit the truth, all was beyond the onlookers' wildest imaginations. The events of the night were sure to be the topic of lively discussion in tea rooms and taverns across the land for the next several years. Who would spare a thought for those 3 pitiful deer? Thus, no one noticed the dark red crack slowly splitting the sky above the forest. A cacophony of fireworks went off in quick succession, 20 signal flares chasing away the darkness like a bright sea of blood. Crows and sparrows startled into flight, cawing and chirping as they fled into the depths of the night. Only now did the attendees in Poetry Hall realize aught was amiss. One after another, they rushed to the railing to look toward the forest.
What happened? Why did everyone's fireworks go off? Look over there, up in the sky! What a heavenly rift! It's a heavenly rift!
For a fleeting second, all was still as death within the hall. Then a flurry of alarmed cries and shrieks rose from the crowd.
A heavenly rift? How could a heavenly rift open in the upper cultivation world? It's right above the hunting grounds.
Shizun, my Shizun is still in there.
It's Zizi!
The guests were packed together like a school of fish in a pond. The panic scattered bait that churned the water into stormy waves. There was no point trying to manage the sect's scandal any longer. Its secrets were open to the entire Jianghu. In an effort to maintain some dignity, Nangang Liu cast a voice-amplifying spell and bellowed.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't panic. It's merely a heavenly rift to the ghost realm. You're all guests of Rufeng Sect. No harm will befall you.
So saying, he summoned his sword with a wave of his hand. Nangang Liu stepped onto the hilt, glowing with blue light, and rose into the whipping night winds.
Guards from all 5 divisions of Rufeng, follow me to the forest. Investigate at once. Elders and disciples, defend Poetry Hall and protect our guests.
He hastily led the guards toward Moon Whistle Fields, on their swords as if relieved to find an excuse to escape the black-clad man's interrogation. As for the disaster that was the wedding, he let it lie.
Everything was fine. How did this happen so suddenly? A heavenly rift has never opened in the upper cultivation realm before. What's going on here?
These cultivators of the upper cultivation realm, accustomed as they were to living like princes, waited anxiously upon the jewel-encrusted balcony. Facing a heavenly rift that had appeared out of thin air was a responsibility far too dreadful. It was one thing beheading a lone monster or two, but a heavenly rift was a different matter entirely. If the rift opened in the upper levels of the underworld, perhaps only ordinary ghosts would escape. But if it were anything like the rift at Butterfly Town 5 years ago, it would open straight into the bowels of hell itself. The guests shivered, remembering that even a great songshir like Chuaning had lost his life in that terrible battle. They crowded fearfully against the vermilion balustrade to survey the red crack snaking across the sky. Chuaning rose to his feet.
Sect leader, the color of this rift isn't right,
he said to Chu Qingyang.
It's likely to access the lower levels of the underworld when it opens. I'm worried about Shu Meng and the others. I'll go check on them.
He walked right to the front of the balustrade, the pale blue hem of his formal robes sweeping the ground. As the crowd looked on in astonishment, he leapt onto the dark tiles of the neighboring roof using Qinggong. His solitary figure vanished swiftly into the distance.
You hang!
Chu Qingyong called, but Chuaning had already disappeared into the lightless night. Chu Qingyong cursed under his breath. He was about to leap after Chuaning when a hand grabbed his shoulder. He turned and found himself face to face with the leering bronze mask. The black-clad man patted his shoulder and said quietly,
Uncle, stay here and look after Aunt. I'll follow Shizun. Don't worry.
Chu Qingyong was stupefied.
Run!
The man in black raised a hand lightly to his lips and shook his head. At no point had Chu Qingyong considered that the man in black might have been Moran. Without waiting for Chu Qingyong to question him further, Moran vaulted the railing with one hand and soared into the night like a falcon, his cloak a billowing cloud of ink behind him. Before long, he reached the rooftop Chuaning had just leapt off.
Shizun!
Moran had made half the journey leaping between rooftops with Qinggong. Finding this too slow, he summoned his oath-bound longsword and rode the wind to quickly catch up with Chuaning. He reached up and took hold of his mask, pushing that sinister bronze guise to the side to reveal an incomparably handsome face. "Wait up for me!" Chibaning's eyes flew wide. "It was you?" "Get on. I'll take Shizun by sword and explain on the way." Chibaning grabbed the hand Moran offered and leapt nimbly onto the blade. He had intended to let go, but Moran's broad and sturdy hand tightened its grip. Moran stood right behind him, and when he spoke, the blazing warmth of his youthful breath brushed the back of Chibaning's ear. In the chilly night wind, it felt scalding. "The sword's powerful," said Moran. "It flies fast, so you'd better hold on tight, Shizun." The two of them spat downwind on the sword. "You planned that whole spectacle in the hall?" Chibaning asked. I heard quite a few things about Song Shitong on my travels through the Jianghu," Moran answered. "She's not audacious enough for murder or other such crimes, but she's the type who would throw rocks at someone at the bottom of a well. If she married Nangongxi and became the young mistress of Rufeng Sect, the sect would probably be even more rotten than it is now." Unexpectedly, Chibaning replied, "Rufeng Sect couldn't be any worse than it is now." Then he furrowed his brow and glanced at Moran's black cloak again, doubts materializing in his mind. "But how did you know Yewangxi is a woman?"